Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's going to give a few seconds for everyone to make the commute. Wonderful. So I think we have everyone. Let me just find you. Yes, I think we're great. So thank you all for being here. I know you probably didn't intentionally choose this session, but we're happy to have you. My name is Nancy Ongstad, and I am the Senior Director of Internship Placement Programs. And this particular breakout session is going to focus on creating and building impactful virtual experiences. And as we just heard, that's going to be important in the sense that in-person work and virtual work will have to be brought together, and it isn't a one-size-fits-all opportunity. So our experts today have had virtual internship programs and are going to give us some of their expertise on how to up your game and raise the stakes on that a little bit. So again, for a few housekeeping items, we're going to keep everyone muted while the panelists speak. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. Lauren is here with me, and she will help moderate that. If you don't feel comfortable putting your question publicly in the chat, you can send a direct message to Lauren through the chat. So without further ado, since we have a time limit, I'm going to go ahead and have our panelists introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with David and his very adorable little helper.
Mama's taking care now.
Okay.
So I can actually really speak. So, hi, I'm David, founder of the Organization for Sustainable Consumption and also co-founder of ecolytiq. We are actually, I call a remote first company because we started last year, right with the start of the pandemic. So we are completely remote first. We do have, for whatever reasons, actually 3 offices, but we hardly use them. So yeah, but I'm happy to share our insights of being really just a remote company.
Wonderful, thank you, David. And then Julia, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself next.
Yes, hi, I'm Julia. I'm the recent People and Culture Manager at ecolytiq, and I'm helping out from originally my own company, Luxit, which focus is recruiting or putting teams together on a competence-based measurement.
Great, thank you, Julia, for being here. I'm going to go to Ed for his introduction.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. Ed Palmer. I currently lead the Global University Recruiting Programs at Unity Technologies. Unity is a real-time 3D development platform that allows our developers to create content in a 2D, 3D, VR, and AR experience platform perspective across various platforms. And looking forward to our conversation today.
Great, thanks, Ed. And last but certainly not least, Vera, if you'd introduce yourself.
Thank you, Nancy. Hey, everyone. I'm Vera Mitzner. I work for Future Earth. We're a global network organization. We support sustainability science and research around the world. I'm the Associate Director of Future Earth US, and also our global secretariat has 5 offices around the world. So even before the pandemic, we're on Zoom all the time. So the change wasn't very dramatic for us.
Wonderful. That's very fortunate. I know some of the host companies here had to make a quick switch, so it's good to have your expertise here. So I'd like to start with David and Julia, who are both coming from the same organization. And David, you were bringing your expertise on why virtual international internship worked for you. And then Julia is going to speak about diversity and inclusion in the virtual workplace.
Sounds good. I mean, as I said, we're a remote first company, so there is nothing else usual than meeting like this, unfortunately, and that's why it was only a logical conclusion to also have internships in that environment. And I think because we are set up in that way, we have the right tools in place to have a daily communication. We have structured ourselves around it in a way that we always have regular check-ins, that we actually exchange with the people. We have a different form of documentation. I think it's all native or digital in that space. So I think the tool set that we use to actually structure our company is digital and remote first. And so it was very easy for us to just get more people on board. To just give you an idea, we scaled from 6 people at the beginning to over 40 now, especially in the pandemic's time. So we basically known to set up new people. We know how to deal with them. We know how to get them up to speed, how they can access information around the company and the work environment. And I think it's the biggest learning, I think, for us is even though we are all digital, we also kind of craving for attention. We also want to exchange and so on. So I think this is something that it's important to set up. It's important to have regular meetings and check-ins, even though they're just digital.
Great, thanks, David. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about how you impose isn't the right word, but how you create a company culture in a virtual environment and sort of engage in the kind of company that you want to be with interns who may not have that office presence.
Yeah, I think we're quite fortunate in the sense that while we're setting up a new company, I mean, I've started several companies in the past, but while we're setting up a new one, we could embed the culture that we actually wanted right from the beginning. So there's not a big change that kind of hits us because we suddenly have to work from home. And I think what is very important, I mean, we're working in the area of sustainability. So any kind of new form, diversity, equal pay, everything is part of it. It has to be part of our DNA right from the beginning. That was the goal. And I mean, what we have looked for was also finding the right people joining us. So we have been fortunate again because we are in an area where a lot of people want to work in, which means we don't have to fight hard for really good talent because talent is automatically coming to us. And I think it's this, but it's also because of the culture, because we value all kind of persons, and we actually want them on board because we think diversity brings a lot of advantages, and having that at the core is very, very important for us. And it's the same with digital solutions, right? So we used to work on a computer, and this environment is important, so we just impose the right tools. So regardless if it's a communication that we use, not just sending emails, but really having real-time communication tools like Slack or Teams or whatever to really have this direct exchange. Yeah, I think that was the keys to it.
Great, thanks, David. I think that segues really nicely into Julia's topic on diversity and inclusion, and that's something that Cultural Vistas really saw some opportunity in around the virtual space, because for so many of our interns, the cost of programs can be prohibitive. And so we've really been able to reach a larger population. So Julia, can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Like I said earlier, I'm founder of another company, Luxit, and we're using like psychological measurement as a basis to build the best teams based on individual competences. And this is something for me that drives me in my personal mission as a psychologist and a woman that I can use this digital format we're offering to companies and institutions to hire more diverse. And this is actually something we're also implementing at ecolytiq with a format that we have a regular basis with team workshops, and we're really including the team on building a good culture and a more diverse hiring structure. Because as it sometimes is, it happens that we often recruit people we already know, and it might be not that diverse, but through this other way of or entry way we have the chance to get it a bit better. And also we have quite a difference in the description or our job descriptions. Our job descriptions already are placed quite diverse in the way we write the job and description. So that's something really important from my experience to get this a bit more strategically done. Yeah, from the first step, that's it.
If I may add to it, I think one of the nice things that we had an intern from the US, and because he could directly jump into the work environment, he doesn't need to leave the house. He can just open up the computer, gets everything he needs, and he could start with us. It was very easy. And I think one of the other things is we have a very flat hierarchy, so we treat everyone of the company equally, which means an intern has the same value than me as a CEO or something like that. And that's quite interesting. So right from the beginning, they jumped into our weekly meetings, and they knew what we're working on, what challenges we had, what kind of achievements we had, etc. And right from the spot on, we asked, okay, how was your week? Because I'm new. I haven't done anything. So great. Well, welcome on board. And everyone knew who that person is. And I actually didn't know until the end that our weekly meeting, which is at noon for us, was at 4 a.m. for him. And I mean, I could have suggested to change it, but he was so happy going up in the morning and just joined because he feels so welcome in that community that he actually never said anything. And actually, while we had this offboarding meeting, he said, well, you never said anything. I mean, 4 a.m. is awful. I would never make you go up that early, but he was absolutely fine with it. And it was a nice confirmation of the way we're working together.
Yeah, but what I actually want to add, like you said, it might be a cost thing that someone can't do an internship the way they would like. So that's also something we can offer in a better way, because we have a good salary structure in the company, and we also give the employee, the practicants. my brain today does not want to work in English yet. It's already in the evening in Berlin. We offer help in every way so that the participants or the internship, the interns can get the best out of this thing. And yeah, like you said, David, that this is something I noticed right from the beginning at ecolytiq. It's really special that everyone has a chance to get their own ideas made into reality. So everyone, even the tiniest intern, has the possibility to shape the company and the culture in its own way.
And also looking on the cost structure, I mean, there's literally no problem having anyone from the world joining the team and learning, and I think that what we want from an internship is actually getting work experience and out of that school environment or so. And that's brilliant, because it doesn't matter where I am or what financial resources I have. I don't have to travel to Berlin or somewhere else and live there, where maybe my living cost is higher than my parents earn, depending on where I'm coming from. So but you can immediately join it because you most likely have a device. And I think if that is something new, and I think that this is fantastic, because we can include really everyone into our Western kind of working environment.
And another point from the psychological view is that the virtual format allows getting also more introvert people into the team, because the distance helps some people to communicate in a better way. And that's something I noticed during this time of Corona, that for some people it is a really big advantage that we don't have to be in this direct contact all the time, and that the contact via Zoom or telephone, Slack is a lot easier and helps to develop personality in quite a different way.
That's a great point. Thank you. I want to turn it over to Vera and ask her about her strategies for helping this diverse group of interns have an impactful experience.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Maybe I start by saying that we actually didn't have an internship program here in the US in our office before last year. Our offices have had interns, especially our office in France, in Paris, has had a program for a long time, but we didn't have prior experience. And how everything got started was that our intern who actually came to us through Cultural Vistas just reached out to us and was like, hey, I'd like to be your intern. Like, yeah, we should have an intern, totally. She was fantastic. And simultaneously, we're actually approached by a university here in the US, and they had funding for supporting interns and wanted to place them within Future Earth. So we actually now have an internship program. So we constantly have interns. It's all virtual. So it's been a year. So we have some level of experience of running this virtually. And also what I mentioned at the beginning, so we are a globally distributed, really complex organization. So our secretariat is located in 5 countries, but we also coordinate and support over 20 global research programs and over 20 national networks and regional networks. So we are like totally distributed around the globe. So it's not an easy place to navigate and understand the organization. So the first thing we really wanted to get right, and we are still doing that, is that just to make sure that the interns' expectations, we understand them, and we will find a right place within our complex organization for the intern. And for instance, this intern, the first intern we had, she wanted to work for a research program, and she was especially interested in mountain research. And we do have a mountain research program that's based in Switzerland. So we placed her virtually within that research team, but we also made sure that she feels part of our global team and part of global secretariat. So she had a supervisor from that research program, but then also a mentor from our secretariat. And also we really made an extra effort for her to feel integrated. I mean, this is a generation of digital natives, but they might also be shy to reach out. So we really tried to create a culture where they feel that they can reach out, and we're available and approachable, and using Slack and Zoom and all these other tools that we have available these days. So another sort of aspect, I think, what made her especially happy with her internship was that we also tried to offer various experiences. So yes, she wanted to do research, but she also was interested in learning about a global network organization for sustainability science. And so we invited her to contribute to our annual summit that brought together over 200 researchers from all over the world. She was a key member of the planning team. And also we organized one-to-one chats with key members of our team, and our global network let her to choose whom she wanted to talk to. And we've done this with the other interns as well, so that they learn to know who are their colleagues, and who else is part of the organization, and they can build their networks, because networking is just so important, and it's a little bit harder to do in the digital environment, or easier. It depends on what you're looking for. So yeah, this is basically what we've been doing the past year. Really, especially that the university program has been popular. Our interns generally have been pleased with the experience. We are also hoping to have, of course, a new Muskie intern. We had a very good experience with our Muskie intern last year, and hoping to grow the program going forward.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, I think the theme that we've also heard through this is how technology is very important. Zoom, Slack, and all of these different elements, in addition to obviously it being remote and needing digital devices. So Ed is with us from the technology perspective to talk about tech and impact with internships.
No, great. I appreciate that, Nancy. And as kind of mentioned earlier, we did run a global internship program. I say pre-pandemic, our experience was in office, in real life, in person, and it was definitely a shift for us dramatically to move that experience to remote and virtual. And a huge piece of that opportunity to provide the great experience that we're looking for from an internship perspective is really the tech stack or platform of tools that we leverage from a collaboration, partnership, and communication perspective. I'd say at nature, that is our culture environment here at Unity. We are typically, and most importantly, as I think by design, but also by nature, a very collaborative organization. And we had obviously platforms, tools, and systems in place that obviously reinforce that or enhance that. But as we thought about the opportunity, not only from our internship perspective, but also for our overall employee experience, it was important for us to ramp up efforts in leveraging the current tools we have in place from a work experience, but also communication perspective for our interns. But also I look at opportunities to bring in maybe new platforms and technologies there. And once again, as I think as talked about earlier, how do we create the right culture environment and set guidelines around, how do we use these tools effectively from a intern experience perspective. So I think you've already mentioned some tools already that I think have been truly important for us from a intern program experience, but also engaged perspective, to whether it be tools, collaboration tools like a Google or a Teams, we've used very effectively and our internal experience. And I think from our perspective, leveraging or telling our interns best practice around leveraging using those tools. I'd say from a communication perspective, it's been tools like Slack and Zoom that have been most effective for us. And I think the integration with our current platform or tech stack has been an important part of those tools being successful for us. And I think in part with that also, as we discussed earlier, it's really kind of putting some framework or best practice and guidelines on how you should leverage and use those tools effectively. And I think the flexibility with that also. I think in using those tools, I think it was creating the right forums, I think, for our interns and hiring managers to interact on those communication platforms, whether it be creating certain Slack groups from an internship perspective in terms of hiring managers to our interns, and knowing what's going to, we have a global cohort, creating a global channel, but also local channels for our interns for the opportunity to kind of connect, interact, engage there. But using those tools effectively, I think from not only a communication perspective, but also from a day-to-day work perspective also, integration with other platforms there. I think, again, I think from our perspective, providing some, again, guidance and framework and best practices around leveraging those tools effectively.
Wonderful, thanks, Ed. At this point, I want to make sure we have time for questions. So if anyone does have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. And I will monitor the chat for anything that comes in, unless Lauren's gotten something.
Yeah, Nancy, I actually got a question, so I'll just go ahead and ask it out loud. So this question is actually directed more to Julia and David. Could you speak more to how you facilitate payments to non-EU interns? This has been a challenge in terms of taxation for other organizations, so we'd love your insight into how you're able to do that.
Absolutely. We don't have any real working concept yet where I say this is something that scales. So luckily, we haven't been really able to pay large amounts of it. So usually what happened is that it was a private kind of transfer that we had out of my own pockets. That usually doesn't work for other companies, but in our sense, I mean, we are anyway a private funded company, so it doesn't matter if it's on my company account or on my private account, it's the same pocket. So I think that's the difference. But to be honest, if you find a solution, I would love to hear about it, because it is a real problem. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the feedback we've received as well, is it's so individualized by each country, and there's real legal expertise that needs to be brought in order to establish that. So unfortunately, it's a hard question to answer. And I think whoever figures that one out in a global sense will be in a good spot.
I mean, as it was me who was asking this question. I'm from IST. Cultural Vistas is our let's say partner in the United States. We are a global exchange organization, and we started with remote internships or virtual internships also last year for the very first time, triggered by the pandemic. And we're always interested in learning about solutions related to this. Although for some cases we already found solutions. So if you are interested, we can maybe have later on a meeting that we can share our solutions that we at least have already in place for some cases. Globally, we are not working well on this, but there are some cases where it works already quite well, I would say.
I would love to hear about it. I mean, our solution for US interns now is we set it up a local division there, but also for other reasons. So it just comes handy that we have now a subsidiary in the US. But for other countries, I'm definitely looking for actually scalable solutions.
Any other questions from the audience at the moment? I received a question about how you all identify and are intentional about intercultural differences that may make a virtual internship more difficult. So for example, with a more hierarchical culture where an intern is expecting a lot of direction from the top down and doesn't necessarily have the confidence to take advantage of all the opportunities that Vera was mentioning and take the initiative, where that might not be a cultural thing that that they're used to doing. How do you handle that?
I can.
Yeah, please go ahead. I thought I heard myself, but go.
I'm curious to hear what you have to say, Julia, but I can maybe go ahead first. So we actually, our interns have been from the US, or they've been foreign nationals studying in the US, so they sort of are already familiar with this Western culture, US culture. But of course, like we are a global organization and we have offices and staff all around the world, and we work with people from different cultures. I think I would just say that it's really about establishing personal relationships and relationships of trust, and would require a little bit more hand-holding from the supervisor or mentor. I think in any way it's super important, because we're not meeting in person. It's a new environment. It might be all scary. Just to have that sort of relationship of trust and an open channel of communication, at least with one employee in the organization. That's why we had the mentoring system. So in addition to having a supervisor, we did every intern does have a mentor who is the person you can go to, and we always check, like, how are you feeling, and share with us, like, do you have any concerns or worries or anything? It's been working for us.
So my answer would be quite similar to yours. We're just building our mentorship program. So everyone who gets onboarded and is participating in an internship has his or her own mentor. And at the moment, I'm doing one-on-ones on a regular basis with all team members, so that we can enable each of them to get to know our culture and live our culture in their own way.
Wonderful, that's really helpful. I received another question of, in 5 to 10 years time, when you look back on this transition for some of you, others not so much a transition, what is the one thing you hope your organization has learned from this new way of working, or that other organizations can learn?
Can maybe speak from our part. I mean, as I said, we're a bit fortunate because we kind of had the chance to set it up the way we wanted, and kind of the circumstances also forced us to do so. So but I think one of the learnings, or one of the key things that I noticed is, as great this is, because it's easier to connect, it's easier to work with, et cetera, it had also some downsides, in the sense of we are more used to work digital, which means we are working more So before that, we went to the office, we did our stuff, then we went home and maybe checked some emails. Now there's this constant work. There's always someone popping up because always someone is working around the globe. And because we're so used to consume those information, it's also very, it's sometimes it also gets us, and we want to see what's happening out there. And I think what we really need to make sure, but working digital means also set boundaries, meaning take your free time, and it's absolutely fine if you if you work 8 hours or less, whatever, but you take your break from work, because that is something that I think is overseen. And we get easily dragged into this digitalness because we're so used to from social media. So I think if we have a learning, and that's something, if I look back 10 years, I really hope we achieved this, that we actually kept people enough free time to rescue.
I'm so glad you said that, David. So this is, I think it's an issue also with more junior staff members, not just with interns, just to like make it very clear, like if you receive an email from me on a Sunday, you don't have to respond. Or if a colleague from Australia sends you an email and it's 11 p.m. your time, it's fine, ignore it, respond tomorrow. Just a clear messaging around this so that they understand what the expectations are.
Yeah, I think that's a definite office culture that as supervisors, we can sort of set a tone about that expectation. Ed, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say from my perspective that I think the biggest plus or benefit that I've seen come from the pandemic and the shift to remote is we have access to a much broader and diverse set of talent that may have not necessarily either been interested in or had the opportunity, given the barriers or physical limitations of doing something in person, physical limitations there. And I think that has opened our eyes to recognize and know that we shouldn't be limiting ourselves to certain partnerships or certain geographic locations or certain talent profiles based upon the physical barriers and limitations there, that we should cast that broader net, because there's a great amount of rich, diverse, and representative talent out there that we should have access to.
Wonderful.
But I would like to, sorry.
No, go ahead, Julia. I was going to actually ask you a question, so go for it.
I just wanted to add, because I noticed, or in my experience, we tend to make more meetings than ever because we have so much more time in between that for me, myself, I'm in so many meetings like I've never been before in my life. And this is something I would like to change in the near future, that we are able to structure the time that efficient, that we don't need this much of meetings. But also we know that it's necessary in Corona times to over communicate, but maybe that there is like a better way of over communicating with also the time for really doing the things, because that's the thing that happens with a lot of meetings, that you can't get the really important things done. So that's,
I think to add on it, I think one of the reasons is because we're missing the body language, right? So if you are in a meeting, you can communicate completely different. You can experience people differently. So Ed, maybe in your direction, can you please build us a virtual room? We can give everyone virtual reality goggles, and we can more sit together.
That is on my radar, trust me, David.
Love it. If you have a prototype, send it.
Yes, please.
We're gonna have a virtual meeting.
I think a lot of us feel that meeting stress for sure. Zoom fatigue is real, as we said. Julia, I'd love to hear a little bit, since Ed was talking about the diversity of the candidates that you can get when that physical barrier isn't necessarily there. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you've adjusted your job descriptions, as you mentioned earlier, to try to get a different set of people that you may not have been able to reach before.
We clearly communicate specific outcomes we want in our jobs, and we communicate specific competencies based on the role. And what I often notice is that job descriptions are quite I don't know, you have to bring the whole package, but it's not really specific. And we really, we make clear what is expected in this role and use like quite a diverse language. So especially in German, it's quite usual that you have a hard language or like a male language, and with English or the English language, I would say it's much easier. So we decided to write all job descriptions in English because it has another, it already is a more diverse language than the German language. So this is kind of the difference we're making at the moment.
Wonderful, thanks. I think that it's a really new approach, because I know, at least from my experience, there's always a very long section about the qualifications you have to have and the degree you have to have and years of experience. And so to work based on competencies is a really interesting way to work. Are there other questions? I don't want to dominate here.
Hey, Nancy, I received another question in the chat. So to those of you who spoke about mentoring, could you maybe dive in deeper about what it actually looks like to mentor an intern in the day-to-day, and any best practices you have around enabling staff to be structured in their approach to mentorship?
I can start on this one. I don't, of course, know if this is the best possible approach, but what we've been doing is really to have exactly one mentor for each intern, and have it pretty unstructured, actually, just to have a space where the interns feel comfortable to share their concerns or ask questions, and really like, how are you doing? And like, I've ended up having pretty broad discussions with my the interns that I've mentored, or just more junior staff that I'm supervising, in our checkings, just advice for the next career steps and working life, and really just try to have this very human relationship. And it's actually have lasted, like I'm still in touch with our interns and write them recommendation letters, and they send me cards, like mail by mail, and it's stayed. It's really rewarding, and I love it. Like I think they will always be my mentees in some way when they advance in their professional career, so that they can come to me if they have questions or need some advice from me.
We had I'll just share this anecdote, and then Ed, I'd like to hear from you because you unmuted, but we had a speaker from Cisco in one of our gala events who talked about their policy of mentorship being one where the mentor had to find someone with like at least one like pretty major different characteristic, so that the mentorship was a diverse one, that they were learning from each other in that perspective, whether it be male, female, whether it be based on race, generational difference. And that had really provided an opportunity for people to understand difference and understand different perspectives. And I thought that was a takeaway that I had that I thought was really interesting in the mentorship approach. So Ed, I'd love to hear from you too.
Yeah, I was actually, what you were just talking about kind of lines to some thought around how we like to structure a mentorship program. Typically what we like to do is, from a mentor perspective, we look to assign someone who actually is outside of their immediate team, that I think gives them actually a broader exposure to the organization, networking opportunities for them. And ideally, like someone maybe a little bit senior in terms of level, which I think actually gives them that necessary advice from a career development, but also for working perspective. And I think also part of our that support structure, I actually like to assign what we'll call like a buddy per se, someone who is like more that peer level, someone who actually may have just gone through that internal experience to answer more some of those day-to-day questions they may not necessarily feel as comfortable, or feel they don't necessarily bother their supervisor or mentor with around certain things, around advice around scheduling Zoom meetings, or advice or things where to find certain things. But someone who's on that peer level has just gone through that same experience they've gone through, and can give them that rich experience and advice from lessons learned or best practices there.
Wonderful, thanks for that. I'm wondering if you all, and when we're talking about the success stories, I'm wondering if you all have lessons learned, things that you tried that you wouldn't do again, or that didn't work, that might be helpful for others to avoid pitfalls.
luckily we did not have any bad experience yet. I mean, we had only one intern. She started, and it actually was right at when the pandemic started, and she had to leave back to the US because the NYU in Berlin shut it down. So it was a very short internship of, I don't know, I think it was not even a week or something like that. But that is as bad as it gets for us. So not really a bad experience yet, luckily. But if there is any in the future, happy to share. Hopefully not.
No, we prefer all good experiences. Just want to learn from each other.
We've also been very lucky with our interns. I mean, the only feedback we had, of course, a feedback discussion at the end of the internship, and it was just at the time. So our Muskie intern was with us for 3 months, and it felt short, especially if you do research. And you leave exactly at the point where you are sort of getting to know everybody and finding your place in the organization. So the timing, but and maybe sort of if we can't extend the time going forward, we just really keep the limitations of the 3-month internship in mind when we create the work plans for the interns.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I'd say lesson learned. I think we learned, I think, in the midst or the course for internship program. You know, we were obviously really focused on creating that global experience, that global cohort with certain programs that we'd put together from either a global executive speaker series. And the nature of our program, ideally, we'd have interns who would start at different time periods over the course of internship. And obviously, they may start in the midst of a certain series of events. But a lesson learned that we focused on as we shifted is, even though an intern may have not started at a certain time period, there's opportunity for us as part of that onboarding experience to give them access to certain programs, events that we had planned that they could be a part of and be able to be a part of the experience, even though they necessarily had formally started. Prime example would be our Global Executive Speaker Series. If they weren't starting until, say, April at a certain time period of a year, we'd still give them access to be able to attend events that are maybe happening in that, March or February timeframe. So I think that's a part of their onboard experience, allows them to be integrated into the internship program experience and start feeling a part of that cohort.
Other questions?
Thanks to all the panelists for really informative and engaging remarks on all of this. I guess one question that comes to mind is about, you've talked through some of the more formal mentorship programs. I was wondering if any of you had any good examples of more informal social side of internships that you've managed to replicate in a virtual context, just because that's obviously an important way to build networks, to form working relationships, and the sort of glue that can hold these programs together. So I wonder if there's any good examples or ideas in that regard.
What I always like to do, but it's not like the typical mentoring system, is like a digital lunch with people. We have like a system that's called Donut. I don't know if it's all over, or you can implement it all over Slack. And there you can set a date with someone you want to get to know and meet for coffee or lunch on a digital way. That's quite nice, and then you have the possibility to talk about different kind of things. And I also like to put into some 3 questions, like what is your biggest strength, so that everyone talks about these topics, and maybe some work related topics in like half an hour or 45 minutes.
We did have go ahead, Ed.
Sorry, go ahead, Vera.
Okay, thanks. We did have a water cooler party like at the end of the internship. I don't know if you've ever used those water coolers, but it was nice because our senior staff was there, and the interns could just freely like float to someone and have a conversation. That was very well received.
I was just going to add a natural or organic way that I've seen relationships develop from a mentorship and networking perspective is typically they may have access to like our employee resource groups, and they may host a panel discussion or meet and greet, or as I think mentioned, a brown bag lunch for the interns over the course of summer. And I think through that event, there's a natural opportunity for them to say, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out any time. I think once again, organically, I think mentor relationships develop there also.
Wonderful, thanks. You know, Cultural Vistas has really taken to trivia during this time. So we use some online platforms to do trivia, and that is a way that we not only sometimes add a cultural element to our internships, where we're, I think Andrew might actually be leading one on St. Patrick's Day coming up, and we've done other ones around various holidays, and that's been really fun if you like trivia.
Yeah, I have to ask, so we've done trivia quite often now. Are there any other best practices besides trivia that you've all used that are fun and engaging so we could mix it up at Cultural Vistas?
We had a wine tasting, a virtual wine tasting. That was very, very fun too, to be honest.
And a cocktail party.
And a cocktail party as well, yeah. So we had like two yearly meetups where everyone got a box of wine and a set of cocktails, and that was very funny. It was like I don't know, 4 or 5 hours event. Not sure if that works in every culture, but at least for us Germans, the drinking part kind of spiced up certain things. So it was quite funny.
I just got to know quite an online game, like a bar crawl through Amsterdam. It's called Kahoot, the game, and it's a guy from Netherlands who developed it during Corona, and it's quite fun too. You know it, Ed? Or?
Yes. Yeah, we've also done virtual happy hours. We've done talent shows also as an opportunity to do something, you know, not so work focused.
So Kahoot, that's the virtual bar crawl through Amsterdam?
Kahoot, I think it was.
Kahoot,
I
okay.
Yeah,
I check the link and then I can send it into the chat.
Thanks, that sounds like so much fun.
Wonderful. I think we're about to wrap up. Lauren, I'll just want to do a time check, but we could probably take, I think Emily just put one more question if we have that. If not, I think we're going to transition back into the main room in just a minute. So just give us 1 second. And if there are any more questions, please feel free to unmute.
Yeah, I guess maybe as we're transitioning, any final thoughts to share, panelists, with us?
Virtual internships works, so I think that's the essence of it.
Yeah, I was going to completely agree. As mentioned earlier, I think it's given us access to talent that otherwise we'd never necessarily engage or had opportunity to connect with.
All right, well, thank you again. I think we can head back to the main room for some closing thoughts, but all the panelists, thank you so much for all of your insights. It's been very, very enlightening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
You.
Thank you.